Happy Lonely Friday, the franchise show of Sam Roberts Now, the loneliest talk show anywhere on the internet. Welcome to Sam Roberts Now. Hope you've had a fabulous week, and we are ready for the most tremendous weekend of any of our lives, the best one that any of us have ever experienced. I think it's going to happen, and I think we're going to start right here. I hope you're already hitting the like button. I hope you've subscribed to our channel. You get all the programming. Wednesday's Sam Roberts Now show. Yesterday's Prima Volta show with Ian Fidance. You would have known to tune in live for tonight's Sam Roberts Now show, and we have a lot to break down. I spent some time this late afternoon rewiring some stuff in the studio. We've got a much better connection to the back monitor now. I'm reading the comments. I'm listening to what we need to do. And what we need to do first and foremost, and of course, the only way that you can guarantee that you'll be able to interact with the show and that we will acknowledge those chats that are going through, super chatted in. Every super chat will get acknowledged here on Sam Roberts Now. Now, I decided to do this because I'm not new to this. I'm true to this, and this is something that a lot of you should know already. But sometimes you need reminding. I was in Stamford today shooting something that'll be out in a couple of weeks. And I realized that with my Friday afternoon occupied, when am I going to get back to a movie theater to see Scream 5? I know, another Scream topic. It's 2 shows in a row. We already did the Scream franchise recap. We did the Scream trailer reaction. More about Scream. Something you have to know about me. Joe Rogan loves talking about COVID. Pat McAfee loves talking about football. And obviously, I'm the third in that trifecta. Sam Roberts loves talking about Scream. It just is the way it is. This will be the last one, though. We're not going to go over it again for a long time. I'm getting all the Scream content out while we can. But the point is, I went back to a movie theater to see this movie. Nobody's going to spoil it for me, and we're not going to spoil it tonight. Spoiler-free review. But if you're a real fan, you should have already seen it, or you should be seeing it tonight. People who get it spoiled for them after Saturday, up yours. I have no sympathy for you. You screwed you. I have no sympathy for you. It's very easy to see. I got 7 jobs and 2 kids and a wife, and I still found a time Thursday at 10:15 p.m. What are you doing? What is anybody doing Thursday at 10:15 p.m.? I'll tell you what I'm doing. Making sure that I got no excuses. Making sure that I see Scream 2022, the 5th Scream movie. After all the talking, I'm not going to come on this show and fake the funk and have not seen it. I saw it. Spoiler-free review. Okay? It made me so happy. I loved this movie so much. And I had high expectations. Obviously, I'm obsessed with the franchise. I'm a huge fan already. And going in, I had my ranking of the Screams. 1, 2, 4, 3. Anybody that doesn't have Scream at 1, 2, 4, 3, I don't really get you. I've seen it ranked in different ways, and I don't understand how it can't be 1, 2, 4, 3. Scream 5 leaves it up for debate. I'll tell you right now. Right now, I can guarantee I'm at 1, 2, 5, 4, 3. I may advance that. I won't give it. I'm aware of recency bias. I can't just go into a movie and go like, that was the best thing I ever saw because I just saw it. But 24 hours removed from seeing this movie, I feel like it's going to end up 1, 5, 2, 4, 3. That's how good this thing is. And I've said, Scream 1, the first Scream, is a perfect movie. This thing is pretty close to perfect. I mean, the reveal's great. The buildup is great. The story is great. It's like it does what the first Scream did, except for 2022. It makes sense for today. It's not as nearly as derivative as all the other Scream movies have been. It's not nearly as reliant on all the other Scream movies as all the other Scream movies have been. For instance, Scream 2, Scream 3, Scream 4 make absolutely no sense without each other. Like they're totally just another kind of a parasite on the story. Meaning, like, they need Scream 1 as the host to suck that energy out of. That's not the feeling you get with Scream 5. If anything, it's like you're bouncing off of Scream 1 and shifting in to this new story. And it doesn't, you don't get the feeling like they were still trying to squeeze the towel of Scream to get just a little more juice out of it. It feels like they took the rich lore of the first Scream and added a continuation that made sense, that logically fit. I mean, everything, and I'm not even going to tell you if my prediction was true or not, or if it was close or not. I'm not going to spoil anything for anyone. I will say that this goes back to the original in the sense that it's super violent. You sometimes forget, because like 2 and 3 were not nearly as violent, especially 3. And 4 wasn't even that violent. You forget when you watch Scream how violent that first one was. Scream 5 is extremely violent. I think it's more mean. The killings are way less fun than any other Scream movie. Like they're the killings and the killer, when that ghost face mask on, is aggressive and mean. It's not a fun teen thing. It's like, that is a mean person that is here to hurt me. That's actually a killer behind that mask. Now, I will say, upon watching the film, I was able to, I was correct when I watched the film about who one of the killers was. I didn't call the other one. In my head, I didn't call the other one, but I did call one of them. Same way for Scream 4, by the way. Pat myself on the back. I got one of them sitting in the theaters watching the movie. It's full of references not only to the first Scream, the first 4 Scream movies, but also to the entire horror genre and to fandom. The same way the first Scream kind of reflected the way movie fans were in 1996, 1997. This is reflective of what movie fan culture is like in 2022. And it's not like we're not living in this weird bubble where we're still following the same laws of Scream 1, which are 1996. Like, we're living within the boundaries of 2022. And it's great. The new cast is really strong. They use the old cast just enough. You know, it's not a bunch of people in their mid-50s at this point or whatever, running around trying to escape a killer and being super athletic and bad stunt doubles and all that. No. They realize that this is a story meant for younger people. And they went through with it. But yeah, man, I was super, super happy with the way they did it. They brought in the people who did Ready or Not to be the co-directors of this. And they did an excellent job. Lots of references to, like, people watch. There were even Easter eggs that were put in the trailers, like in the teaser trailers, that were meant to draw a reaction. And that reaction was referenced in the movie, which is insane when you think about it. Because they put things in the trailer meant to draw a reaction. They reference that reaction in the movie. But when they put the things in the trailer, you couldn't have reacted to it yet. They just predicted how people would react to it and then referenced it. I mean, that's like psychological manipulation on another level. I mean, nothing makes you feel like an idiot, like realizing they wrote this movie and then referenced how I would react to it simultaneously so that when the movie came out, I could react to it in real time, and then that would be referenced. It's insane. I feel like they're in my brain. They're doing mind tricks to me. But yeah, man, it was great. Tony says Ready or Not blows. Ready or Not doesn't blow at all. Ready or Not doesn't suck or blow. Ready or Not is a fabulous movie. It's great. I loved it. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know that they need to do any Scream movies after this, to tell you the truth, even though, like, you could see on the poster, and it says right there, the killer is on this poster. I walked into the theater. That poster was outside the door. It said the killer is on this poster, and the killer was indeed on the poster. That's not a spoiler. It says it right there for you. Do we need more after this one? I don't know. I mean, no. Like I said, the new cast is strong. But I really do feel like this one puts a real bow on it. Like, I don't think that Scream 4 was a little janky. I don't know that it put a bow on the franchise. Scream 5 put a bow on the franchise. And I can't think of another movie where you leave the 5th installment going, they nailed it. That was perfect. You know, most of the time, even if you like the 5th installment of a movie franchise, you're just so forgiving. You don't have to go into this. That's key. You don't have to go into this with a forgiving spirit. Like Fast and the Furious. Fast and the Furious 5 is where they just give up on any semblance of reality. That's where it begins. Fast 5 is like, we're going to turn this franchise into something completely different. They did Fast and the Furious, they did The Fast and the Furious, then Too Fast, Too Furious, then Tokyo Drift, then Fast and Furious as the 4th one. And then after that, they decided, we're going to turn them into superheroes. And you go in and you either accept it or you don't. And you just become forgiving of all the nonsense that could never happen, because they're just taking the franchise and shaking everything they can out of it. And that's not what this was. That is, I think, to a degree, what Scream 4 was. But that's not what this was. So, somebody's asking, was Skeet Ulrich in the new Scream? I told you, I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not going to spoil anything. I would tell you the people that everybody in the poster is in the movie. I'm not going to tell you yet if anybody was in the movie that's not on the poster. It's possible. Lots of things are possible. I will tell you there are definitely people in the movie that aren't on the poster. The cast is bigger than that. Even if they're just extras, even if they're just town people. Some of the characters in the movie are not on the poster. But I'm not going to tell you who's in this movie. I mean, it'd be crazy if Skeet Ulrich was in this movie, right? I mean, he died in the first one, right? Did he? I think so. Whatever. We'll find out. Go to the movies. See. Newcomb says, when did they go into space? In Scream, they didn't go into space. Fast and the Furious, in the 9th one, they went into space. In the 9th one. Jason, they waited for the 10th one before they went into space. But that's what I mean. You're talking about spreading 5 movies out over 25 years. They don't need to send Courtney Cox into space. You know, there's no reason. They kind of got it with this one. But like, if they made more, would I be excited about it? Yeah, I'd do 7 more shows about it. I'd do another franchise recap. I'd do a trailer reaction. I'd do everything. I'd be so pumped. But this does feel like one of those quit while you're ahead moments. If you want to do another one, take the energy and put it into a new story. Quit while you're ahead, because you nailed it. You nailed it with the 5th one. And you've got this package now where you can watch all 5 Scream movies. There's not one bad one. Some are better than others. There's no bad Scream movies. They all make sense. They're all cohesive, and they all work. And this one actually complements that whole thing. This one makes it so that the 4 work together. So quit while you're ahead before you screw the whole thing up, because we don't need Ghostface to go to space. We don't need it. You got it. You nailed it. Spartan says, did you at least get thanked in the credits of Scream? I didn't see that. And I was kind of bummed out, because I'm used to seeing my name in the thank you credits. I got thanked in the Ghostbusters, and I got thanked in Red Rocket. So the idea that I'm not thanked in the credits of Scream, and I didn't do any shows about Red Rocket. I didn't do any shows. I don't think I did any shows about Ghostbusters. I didn't even see Ghostbusters. I did see Red Rocket. It's great. But I didn't do a show about it. I did 3 shows about Scream. I didn't get one thank you in the credits. Kind of absurd. I don't quite understand it. I was looking at news articles. By the way, I see the super chats are already coming in. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to super chat. I was looking at news articles, and I was going to talk about this. This is, again, like I saw. I like reading the comments here on Sam Roberts Now, and some of it have to do with content on the show. I really prefer when the contents or the comments are about the content that we're talking about on the show. But sometimes they're about other technical things, like hot dog glitching all over the screen. And I guess when we were watching the Scream trailer, there was all this whatever. It wasn't lined up, and that's because it was AirPlay connected. It was connected through Wi-Fi. So now it's wired in, HDMI wired in. I wired it through. So that will never happen. Hopefully, it will never happen again here on Sam Roberts Now. The other thing that was questioned was why on Wednesday's show did it say something about cannabis, and then I didn't talk about it. People thought I was avoiding the topic. Well, one person did, probably being facetious. I wasn't avoiding the topic. We just didn't get to it on Wednesday. But since you asked, I thought, far be it from me to not bring this up, because it did get me thinking, right? I read this article on Thursday. And don't come, on Wednesday, I guess was when the show was. And I don't want anybody coming after me, because I seen this thing, 270 science and health professionals signed a petition that apparently Spotify has to really monitor everything Joe Rogan says. If you ever listen to Joe Rogan's show, he's literally Googling as he goes. Anybody that is listening to Joe Rogan's show and being like, this is my one source of information, and if he says it, it's true, the problem lies in the listener. Joe Rogan is a comedian that does a podcast. He has all kinds of guests on. I listen all the time. Sometimes his guests agree with them. Sometimes his guests disagree with them. Sometimes his guests have controversial points of view. But it's like, he had the doctor from CNN on, Sanjay Gupta. And then he has this other doctor on that people got mad at, Robert Malone. Now, look, Sanjay Gupta did feel like, this is a guy who works within the network, within the confines of the CNN network. And that's a thing, and it's a real thing. Okay? So everything that he says, you have to take with that grain of salt. That he is affiliated with this bigger corporate structure. Okay, I can take it with a grain of salt. I'll listen to what he has to say. Robert Malone, if you listen to that Joe Rogan show, I didn't know much about him. I knew that there was some kind of controversy. Joe even started with saying he was banned on Twitter. I knew there was some kind of controversy about that, and obviously I knew he was banned on Twitter because Joe brought it up. But, as he was talking, he was giving himself credit for everything, this Robert Malone. He was giving himself credit for so much stuff. And just as a general rule of thumb, just as a human being, whenever I see a person within their field, especially when it's the sciences, but regardless, if I see an entertainer, right? If I meet a writer, let's say, a writer who gives himself credit for lots of projects that he's not credited on. Oh, yeah, this movie came out. I'm not credited on that, but I actually gave them the idea for that. Oh, I gave them the idea for this. My full of shit meter starts to go off. I'm saying there's a good chance he's full of shit. And the meter goes off. And everything he says, I take with that grain of salt. He's given himself a lot of credit for a lot of things. He's probably full of shit on some of it. He likes to give himself credit. It's a thing he likes to do. I'm going to remember that. When I meet somebody that, pretends they're good at everything, everything that you bring up, you've all met that person. Everything that you bring up, they've got some kind of experience with it. They're 30 years old and have somehow dipped their foot into 150 different professions. You know what that tells me? You're probably not good at any of them because you haven't had time to get good at any of them. There's no way you could have spent 10,000 hours doing any of it. And the fact that you have something to say about everything and that you carry yourself with a level of expertise on all this stuff, the alarm starts going off, you're probably somewhat full of shit. I was listening to Robert Malone on Joe Rogan's show, And he was giving himself credit for so much stuff. And some of it could be true, but the full of shit alarm was going off in my head. Okay, I'm going to listen to him. I'm going to research some of what he says. If I find it interesting, I'll look it up. I'll do whatever. Maybe I'll ask some people around. Maybe I'll text Dr. Steve. Who knows? But the fact that he's giving himself credit for all this stuff, the full of shit alarm is going off in my head, just so I know. Same way when Bob Lazar was on Rogan's show. And he was like talking about all this stuff that he was giving himself credit for. Full of shit alarm started going off in my head. Probably somewhat full of shit. Maybe some of what he's saying is true. Probably some other stuff he's saying he's full of shit. But I'm a human being with a brain who can assess these things and go like, yeah, like the idea that like we're so if we're so worried that people are just blindly going to whatever they hear, are just going to go, I heard it, it's true. Then we can't just succumb to that as a collective society. We can't just say, well, if a thing is said, everyone will believe it. So we have to monitor that thing that's being said. Instead of going, okay, well, if we have a problem where people are just going, and there's no full of shit alarm going off for anyone, then we got bigger fish to fry with the way we process information as human beings. You know, I saw Candace Owens on the thing saying, Bob Saget died and he got the vaccine. You wonder if it's connected. Like, anybody that listens to that and the full of shit alarm doesn't start going off in their head, what are you talking about? How could that, there's no connection. You're not even making a correlation. You're just saying two things in the same sentence that happens to conveniently line up with the narrative that you've been pushing for a long time. Then the full of shit alarm starts going off in my head, and I'm completely safe to listen to it. I'm not worried that Candace Owens is out there saying this thing because I have this full of shit alarm that's going off in my head going like, okay, that's the grain of salt I'm going to take this with. I'm not going to sit there and be like, oh, thank God for Candace Owens. I just listen to whatever she has to say. She's selling me on something. This is the narrative that she exists within. And whether it's, for nefarious purposes or it's what she truly believes, I don't care. It's a full of shit thing. I seen on Facebook, Hulk Hogan's over here saying that he thinks Betty White and Sidney Poitier died from the vaccine. They were each in their 90s. Like, okay, if the Hulkster feels, and I'm a Hulkamaniac from the day. If Hulk Hogan believes that, that's fine. But going forward, and, honestly, based on some of Hulk Hogan's previous comments, the full of shit alarm was already in my head when he spoke. But I don't find that to be dangerous because anybody that gets their medical advice from Hulk Hogan, I would say that that's their problem. So I say all this to say, number one, we have to take a little bit of responsibility. Before we declare that Joe Rogan is public enemy number one, we do have to take a little bit of responsibility to allow this comedian to have a podcast where he has conversations. And that we need to take the responsibility to be able to, as individuals, everyone has to be able to process information and realize that some things are going to be true, some things are going to be false, some things are going to be opinions, some things are going to be interpretations, and that just because a thing is said in a place doesn't mean anything. But that goes back, and that's why I say I just found this to be a funny, quirky, little interesting thing that I saw on the internet. Don't come to me and be like, hey, you told us. Believe it or not, I'm not a doctor. I barely squeaked by college. And as I said on the radio this week, I have a degree in sociology, and the thesis paper that I submitted, which was about 25 pages long, had no citations in it. It had to be given back to me so I could put citations in. Not an educated man. Not even the smartest man you'll ever meet. But I like talking, and that's what I'm doing here. So I saw this article, right? And it said that Oregon State University had put out this study, and I guess they were going through the chemicals, and they said that they had found that CBGA and CBDA which are both found in cannabis and hemp, more specifically, have the potential to combat coronavirus. Something about the way the proteins grab onto things or whatever it is. They block the virus's ability to infect. So like if you are exposed to coronavirus, theoretically, and you have this CBGA and CBDA in your system, Oregon State University is saying that it may have the potential to block that virus from infecting you. Now look, they are coming forward now. And then I saw another article that said, well, there was no like human or animal testing. We can't yet declare. Because I saw an article from October that said people who smoke weed are more likely to get COVID. But that's probably just from sharing saliva, right? That's probably just from passing joints around, I would think. Or just the fact they're in, like, it's a social activity. They're in close quarters. They're going, that's a lot of particles. I've seen the diagrams. Particles get passed. So, and I see B. Herb is saying, but how often do you have to bake in order for it to work? I think 3 times a day. I don't know for sure. But yeah, so they're saying that like none of that data is there. There's no testing. They're saying this study is very, very misleading. And that's fine. That's probably true. I don't think we have the data that would say that cannabis stops COVID. We don't have the data that say cannabis doesn't stop COVID, but we don't have data that says cannabis stops COVID. All that said, just the fact that it may have the potential, and that's all this says. Like, people found this and they instantly went to town on it going, holy shit, we can smoke weed, we'll never get COVID. They're saying something completely different. They're saying these compounds found in hemp have the potential to combat the virus's ability to infect. Potential. All that said, even though it's just the potential, have we ever been more wrong as a society about a drug, about an herb, about anything as we are about weed? Like, isn't it insane that the more time passes, the more positive effects of cannabis come out and complete lack of negative effects come out? Like, I mean, nothing. There's whole movements, legalizations, the cannabis industry going crazy, stores on corners legally selling weed. Like, it has become so accepted. And I mean, no negative effects have come up. I mean, maybe you could get cancer from smoking, but then they say that cannabis is good for cancer. So I don't know. There's like literally no new negative effects are coming up. And all that's happening is new positive effects are showing up, and previous negative effects are turning out to be not true. Doesn't it make you wonder, how could the narrative on pot have been so incredibly incorrect? Maybe nothing has ever been that wrong before. It's crazy. I mean, the degree to which it was not true, the degree to which I can't fathom. Like, in 2022, I would love to hear somebody explain why this should be illegal. Like, is there anybody left that thinks that? Or at least, not even would argue that. Maybe there's nobody that would argue that. But I would love to find out if there's anybody that can justify any of the negative attention that cannabis used to get. Is there anybody that can sit there and go, well, no, it did get negative attention because of this? I mean, I'm sure there's some people that would still do the gateway drug thing, but I believe that that's been fairly well disproven. I mean, it's got the potential to combat COVID's infection, ability to infect. You know how much bad news there is about corona? Finally, some good stuff, and it's pot-based? Somebody's got to take the L on this hard, because it's insane how much the opposite of what was said was true. People are in jail still for marijuana. People are in jail for it now, today. And you're like, it's one of the more harmless things that you could have on your person. One of the more harmless, like on the list of things that cause no threat of danger, it's real high. I mean, I guess when it was super illegal, I mean, were people ever killing each other for weed? Maybe in the beginning. Maybe decades ago, maybe. But, man, that's crazy. Daniel Price said, want to know why it got made illegal to begin with? Oil, textile, and tobacco industries. That's why. Oh, and the reefer madness. Yeah, reefer madness. Reefer madness. Newcomb says, I'll take the W and keep toking. Good for you. Good for you. Yeah, you wonder, I mean, will we ever know? Will we ever know who really led the way to demonizing cannabis and why? Because clearly, I mean, people are getting rich from it now, and it's like a positive thing. I feel like within a couple of generations are going to have to pass, because all of us still grew up with this notion that it was a very dangerous thing. Don't let anybody know. But within, I would say, 2 generations, people are going to look back on this being bad. Cannabis being an evil substance as like, I don't understand it. Like, it's going to be one of those things that's taught. And people are going to be like, I don't get why. And the teachers are not going to be able to explain it. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, there was something else going on. There had to be something nefarious. This is crazy. It's crazy what happened. It doesn't make sense. Oh, I'll tell you what else. What else is very... Daniel Price seems very knowledgeable on the thing. And Jay Sco says it was the movie Reefer Madness which demonized it. Yes, you're right. But clearly there was somebody behind Reefer Madness, right? Like, clearly there was a story behind it. And I'm sure maybe I should research it. Maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe at some point I'll try to get to the bottom of it. Because it's so... Like, when I read that there's CBGA and CBDA found in here and it has the potential... You can get CBD for your dog. Did you know that? I'm not doing it. I'm not giving my dog weed because, it's already eating all the kids' food. But you can now just get CBD for your dog and be like, chill out, homie. Chill out. Can you imagine describing to somebody in the 1960s that in 2022 you could just give your dog cannabis? They'd think you were living in the Twilight Zone. They'd either think it was the Twilight Zone or paradise. Maybe it's both. Who knows? Maybe it's both. I'll tell you what got me really excited. And I want to take a minute to try to explain this to you guys. Because I feel like I've talked about it in passing before, but I feel like there's this thing about Degrassi, whether either you're in or you're out. And the people that are in are all the way in. And the people that are out don't understand it at all. Yesterday, HBO Max posts this image that says Degrassi is coming back. And all we see is this image. No other real information. I did a little digging. You find out that there is a Degrassi reboot coming. Some people said it was unnecessary because we already have Euphoria. I haven't seen Euphoria yet, but I'm going to check it out if it's anything like Degrassi. They say that they're rebooting Degrassi and that all the episodes of Degrassi The Next Generation are coming over to HBO Max. You can find them now. They're on like Tubi or whatever. But apparently in this spring, they're all going to come over to HBO Max, and that's going to be a thing. I think that's going to be huge. I think you're going to see a revitalization of Degrassi The Next Generation. And I want you guys to get on board with me right now on this. So Degrassi started, it's a Canadian teen melodrama. Technically, Degrassi started in the 1980s. Some people that are even, our age, my age, grew up with the original Degrassi and knew about it and everything. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anything about any Degrassi. I'm not going to fake the funk. I didn't know anything about Degrassi until the new generation. But once the new generation came, I was all in. Now, obviously, I am not of Canadian descent. I did not even visit Canada until into my adult life. However, Nickelodeon started a network called Teen Nick. And right around the age of 19, just as I was way too old to be watching Teen Nick, I don't know, some friends, they were female friends. They had already probably friend-zoned me, I would assume. I don't even remember. Some friends were like, no, we're watching Degrassi. I was like, Degrassi, what's that all about? And I turned it on. I was like, this is dumb. I'm not watching some Canadian teenage melodrama. And I turned it on. I watched it with them. Like I said, they probably friend-zoned me. So, you know, they're watching their girl shows with me. They probably went and got picked up by some, like, frat guy after that who would never watch Degrassi. But for me, after their date, you know, after they got done doing what they were going to do with a real man, I came home and watched Degrassi with them. That's the position I was in at that point in my life, and I don't mind it because I got exposed to Degrassi. All's well that ends well. We make our choices in life, and we draw the positives out of it. This is what I did. This was my positive. So I start watching this show, and I'm like, I don't know how to explain this to you guys because I want to preserve my masculinity. But this show's fucking awesome. And I found that the best thing that I could do to preserve my masculinity was speak to my truth and be honest. There's no, it's not, and people say, what's that, your guilty pleasure? There's no guilty pleasures. I don't live in a world of guilty pleasures. If you like something, you like something. And I watched this show, and I was like, this is one of the great shows. This is one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. I will watch this for the rest of my life. And guess what? I did. Degrassi, The Next Generation. Came out in the early 2000s and lasted 14 seasons. Now, you may search around and you'll find on Netflix, there's a show called Degrassi The Next Class. 4 seasons of it. It's on Netflix. It's a spinoff of that original Degrassi The Next Generation. Look, Degrassi The Next Class is a very good show, but it's not essential watching. You can watch it if you want. I don't care. I'm not going to, what am I going to do? Judge you? But it's not essential watching to Degrassi The Next Generation. Let me explain to you. Degrassi The Next Generation was so great because they were tackling issues that at the time were not really getting talked about on like fun, light teen television, right? It was fairly revolutionary for the times. Let's talk about some of these characters. Let me bring you through. I'm going to bring you in the way most people are brought into this show through Drake. Drake is the great celebrity to come off of this show. Drake is actually the best thing that's ever happened to Degrassi because Drake is that mainstream anchor for this show. Degrassi, The Next Generation, is where young Aubrey Graham got his start. Before he was Drake, Aubrey Graham was Jimmy Brooks. Jimmy Brooks is where I got to know him. As a matter of fact, when I found out Drake was a recording artist, I said, what's Jimmy from Degrassi doing rapping? Who knew? I knew he was a musician on the show. I know he rapped on the show, but he was also kind of corny on the show. Like, he wasn't that, he was like Canadian cool. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't like New York cool, but he was like cool for like Toronto. He was like Toronto cool, you know, which neither here nor there. But so Jimmy Brooks is a student at Degrassi. And again, this lasts 14 seasons. So some of the pictures you'll see, they're like little kids. It starts when they're like, you know, in middle school, going into high school. There's like, we really follow these people through the course of several years. But you'll notice that Jimmy is in a wheelchair. See, Jimmy Brooks, he was on the basketball team. Like I said, he was a rapper. I think he drew at one point. Good, you know, an illustrator. But the reason he's in a wheelchair is because and this is like I said, Degrassi goes there. It was a tagline for one of the seasons. Degrassi goes there. In one of the arcs, one of the story arcs on the show, Jimmy Brooks gets shot by a school shooter. There weren't that many teen melodramas that were on in the middle of the afternoon for 21 minutes that were doing school shooter story arcs in the early 2000s. We're not that far removed from Columbine, okay? And it's Canada. They hate shooters in Canada. They don't like guns in Canada unless you're hunting moose. But Jimmy Brooks was the victim of a school shooter in Degrassi. The guy that shot Jimmy Brooks, oh, I went the wrong way. This asshole right here, Rick. Rick shot Jimmy Brooks. I'll tell you what happened. So Rick was like the outcast of the school. He's just a weird guy. He had cool long hair and everything. You look at him, he seems like a cool guy. Not a cool guy, just a weirdo. He liked weird things. He didn't relate well with any kids. He didn't have a lot of friends. And every time he would meet a friend, it would turn into one of those things where one person started to kind of like him, and then the other kids would be like, "You're hanging out with Rick? That guy's an asshole." And then the person would be like, "You really think so?" And then they'd see Rick being an asshole and they'd be like, "I'm not going to hang out with him so much anymore." And I mean, that really was the case with Rick. Even though he was bullied, he was also an asshole. And that doesn't come up enough. A lot of times people portray the bully narrative as it's just a kid getting bullied, and that's not right. But what people don't talk about sometimes is, like in the case of Rick, sometimes people get bullied because they're a fucking asshole. And that while we shouldn't have bullies, also don't be an asshole. Both of those things should be true. So, whatever. Rick is kind of an asshole, but he's also being bullied. And they do this story arc where some kids finally start to warm up to him. They finally start being nice to him. And he goes on to this like mathletes type thing, you know, an academic decathlon type thing where he's on stage answering questions and stuff. And he wins for Degrassi. And he finally has this moment where he wins. Now, this guy right here, Spinner with the slick haircut. Spinner is low-key my favorite character on the show. Just the journey that this guy goes on, he's fantastic because there's just something about him where you know at a young age that Spinner will never be successful at anything. He'll never be so not successful. He just won't live a life of any notoriety. Like he'll probably get a job at a supermarket and just that'll be most of what he does with his life. He probably won't have kids, and if he does have kids, they'll be exceptionally average. And the stuff he does in high school will probably be the most interesting stuff he does throughout his entire life. That was what I got from the character when he was introduced. But see, Spinner, at this point of Degrassi, falls in with kind of a bad crowd, starts rebelling. And he and this kid, Jay, set up like yellow paint and eggs and chicken feathers in a bucket above the stage in the auditorium. So that way when Rick wins, they can hit him like Carrie. And it is a total takeoff on Carrie. And Rick wins, and he has this great moment, and it is literally what happens in Carrie. Pull the bucket down, he gets covered in yellow paint, feathers all over him, you know, blah, blah, blah. So Rick, unfortunately, does not have superpowers like Carrie. And Rick is pissed, and he goes into the bathroom, and he starts washing the paint off and everything. And then Spinner and Jay walk into the bathroom, and Rick goes into the stall. He doesn't want Spinner and Jay to see him. I think it was Jay. But whatever. Spinner and his friend, they're talking about what happened, and they look under the stall, and they see Rick's feet. And they go, oh. Now, Spinner used to be best friends with Jimmy over here, but they're not friends anymore. So Spinner sees Rick's shoes and says, oh, I'm so glad Jimmy did his part. Jimmy did such a good job. Realizing that Rick would hear him and pinning the whole thing on Jimmy. Well, Rick is fed up with that. So he goes to school and he shoots Jimmy. And Spinner realizes, oh my God. I mean, I thought I was just getting myself out of trouble. I didn't realize that I was going to get my ex-best friend Jimmy shot. It fucks Spinner up big time. So what happens to Rick? Well, Rick points the gun towards Sean's girlfriend, Emma. This is Sean. I don't have to explain to you who Sean is. It's obvious to anybody that can see. Sean is the misunderstood heartthrob from the wrong side of the tracks. Look, he's as good looking as the day is long, and it doesn't hurt that there's something dangerous and rebellious about him, but he's got a good heart. If he were born under different circumstances, he'd be a totally different person. But he's a product of his upbringing. You just have to peel back those layers. He's the ultimate fixer-upper. He's the cutie pie fixer-upper, and he drives these girls crazy. They all love him. What's not to love about Sean? And then you see Sean step up. Rick points the gun at Emma. This is Emma. This is Sean's main squeeze. Emma's a good girl, by the way, but she sees Sean as a fixer-upper. So Sean sees him point the gun at Emma. He gets the gun away from Rick. And like they wrestle for it and the gun goes off. Rick ends up getting shot and he dies. Rick gets killed in the shooting. Sean accidentally kills Rick. And while it's a success because Rick was an asshole, he's about to shoot Emma, Sean stopped him and he killed Rick, it fucks Sean up because Sean is not trying to be a murderer. So Rick is just a life ruiner all around. And honestly, Spinner didn't help. Now, Emma, we watch Emma blossom into this beautiful young lady from a very awkward, 12 or 13-year-old, or however old she is when the show starts. But she's the ultimate good girl. She concentrates very much on school. All this stuff is very important to her. But she ends up meeting Sean early on. And I mean, that it's almost like the Kelly and Zach of Degrassi, except Sean is a rebel from the other side of the tracks. And Emma is more of a good girl than like the school cheerleader. Now, Emma is absolutely essential to the show. Emma is the linchpin of Degrassi The Next Generation. Emma is what ties this show to the original Degrassi because Emma is the daughter of this gentleman, Snake, who starts Degrassi The Next Generation as a teacher, but eventually gets promoted to principal. Now, Snake is a member of the original cast of the first Degrassi show. So Snake, on the original Degrassi, was dating Spike. Her name was Spike because of her hair. She doesn't have spikes in her hair anymore, but we still know her as Spike because that was the original Degrassi. Snake and Spike, they get together, they produce Emma. So Emma is the child of the now married Snake and Spike, which is why this is Degrassi The Next Generation. And there's a couple other characters that pop up from the original Degrassi and everything, and there's other tie-ins, but really that's essentially how you make that leap. That's essentially, now Degrassi The New Class on Netflix, it's like, I think Snake is still there, so that's kind of the tie-in, but it's not such a direct chain blood link. It's very important. This has left people wondering, this Degrassi reboot. Is it going to be maybe Emma and Sean got together and had a kid, and that kid's now in Degrassi? Will there be some generational tie-in on this new show? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. So this is Manny. Manny is also essential to the show. Manny is Emma's best friend. And we watch, again, Manny go from this, little kid and blossoms into a lovely young lady. But on her way, she gets into trouble. She gets sexualized at a young age because she realizes that this is going to get male attention. And that's very important to her. And she ends up hooking up with Craig. Now, Craig he's like the kind of cute boy artist type. But Craig is a very great character because Craig has he has mental illness issues. He has I don't know if it's bipolar or what it is. I think it might be bipolar. But he ends up, and again, it's like you're tackling this, now you're tackling mental illness and stuff like that, and you do it through this character, Craig. But Craig, early on, is dating the lovely Ashley here. Ashley ends up with Jimmy. Jimmy and Ashley are kind of linked for a while. But early on, Ashley and Craig are an item. Now, Craig ends up cheating on Ashley with Manny. Emma finds out about this because Manny is going through a period in her time in her life where she's very sexual because she likes the attention it brings her, and that's a thing that happens. Emma finds out about this. Manny calls Emma a prude. Emma calls Manny a slut. Oh, it's bad. The friendship breaks up. Craig ends up getting Manny pregnant by mistake. They're irresponsible. They're young people. And Manny ends up getting a schmushmortion. And the reason we're saying schmushmortion is because apparently in America it is such a dirty word that, get this, the schmushmortion episode of Degrassi was not aired in America. Teen Nick wouldn't air the episode. You had to find it. You either had to download the episode on Kazaa Or eventually, when they released the Degrassi DVDs, which I bought those DVD sets, you could get the Shmushmortion episode. But it never aired on Nickelodeon. It was too much for the young people, the young teen Nick watchers. Americans couldn't handle it. The Canadians could handle it, but the Americans couldn't handle it. And that's what I mean. How many of these teen melodrama shows are going like, oh, it's fun, we're cheating on a test. By the way, my friend might have a Shmushmortion. It's bad. It's serious issues. It's the things that teens are really dealing with. So the whole, Ashley has her heart broken by Craig. Ashley and Craig, I think later on do end up getting back together, and we realize like the couples that last, and who knows, maybe Craig and Ashley will be the ones that have a kid in the new Degrassi. Maybe it'll be somebody else. I don't know. But Emma's technically friend, but more like, let's be honest, frenemy is Paige. This is Paige Michaelchuk, and you can tell from her shirt. She considers herself a hottie. Paige Michaelchuk is like she starts out the show as the resident mean girl, but she does start to blossom into a much more well-rounded person. She and Spinner end up fairly well linked as a couple, but at first, she's very, very manipulative about everything. She's very, very selfish. She finds out that like Ashley's stepdad is a talent agent. She wants to be famous. Like she's got a lot of gross personality features that she has to mature out of, and she does end up maturing out of them. It's a very nice thing. But Paige is good friends with Marco. Now, Marco is also very important to the show because early on, we watch Marco struggling with his sexuality. Marco is gay and is just realizing that he's gay, but is not ready to tell his friends. Keep in mind, this is the early 2000s. We're living in a different world. This is probably about 20 years ago. Okay, the idea of coming out in, middle school, high school, whatever age they were, it's the scariest thing in the world. And at the time, I'm sure a lot of Canadian people watching it, maybe some people watching it on Teen Nick, were struggling with the exact same thing that Marco was struggling with. And all his friends are like, why don't you get a girlfriend? Why don't you get a girlfriend? And he doesn't want to tell him. And they're making gay jokes around him. And it's all so stressful. But his life does finally get better when he owns it and he finds out who his real friends are. And it really is a beautiful saga that gets unfolded. Now, the one that will bring any Degrassi fan to tears, and this is a trigger warning. Any of you Degrassi The Next Generation fans are going to have an emotional response to this. This is JT York. James Tiberius York. And talk about a rascal. This kid, he's the Bart Simpson of Toronto. He is just always finding himself in trouble, always scheming and scamming. Yeah, I feel like he just drops banana peels everywhere he goes just to watch people slip on him. The mischief that this kid gets into. But again, we watch this kid mature and go on and everything, and he ends up in high school and whatnot. And the tragedy of JT is we watch him get into all this trouble. We watch him get in and out of relationships and everything, and we really follow this young kid kind of mature into a man that realizes that there are serious things in life. But before he can become a man, before he can even graduate high school, he gets stabbed to death. JT gets killed on this show, okay? There is some strong messaging about when things get taken too far and what really matters. And he gets into a major, and he's not this young when he gets killed. He's in high school, but he's still a kid. And he gets into like all these like prank wars and everything, and it goes beyond prank wars, obviously, with a rival high school. But he ends up in the crosshairs of a group from the rival high school that he shouldn't be in the crosshairs of. And boom, stabbed to death. And you could look on YouTube right now, look it up. A lot of people have made in memoriam videos for JT. It's a terrible, terrible thing. It's very, very sad. JT, of course, is best friends with Toby. Now, Toby, you hope at some point kind of blossoms out of his nerddom, and he never really does. He's clearly a nerd. He kind of always stays a nerd, and it kind of is what it is. He pines for Emma. But, look at this. If you've got Sean, the cutie pie bad boy of Degrassi, or Toby, the hot dog of Degrassi, who are you going to go with, okay? Toby doesn't have a prayer. He doesn't have a shot. And he finds that out the hard way, and he goes through the troubles. Even as JT starts to kind of grow and mature and girls start to notice him, they still aren't interested in poor Toby. And Toby's got to deal with that, you know? And we watched Toby deal with that, and I'm sure we've all had to deal with it. Their friend Liberty is here, and Liberty is, I mean, she's a nerd too, but she and JT end up being quite the thing for a period of time before, unfortunately, JT passes. And that's kind of, I mean, that's the broad brushstrokes of what you're dealing with Degrassi The Next Generation. I can't recommend it enough. It's on Tubi now, I think. But eventually it's coming to HBO Max. I mean, guys, clearly, I've just got all this information cycling in my head. Half an hour before we went live, I decided I was going to tell you guys about all my favorite characters on Degrassi. This is not something that I wrote in advance. Clearly, and I haven't watched the show in many years. It's all still floating around up there. That's how near and dear I hold to my heart, this Degrassi thing. But I'm going to share my passions with you, okay? That's what I'm going to do here. We might not share the same passions, but I hope that you can at least relate to being passionate about something. It's my goal. What can I tell you? If you want to contribute to the show, go ahead and contribute. Toby created Wrestling with Regret. He does kind of look like him. If you want to contribute, please go ahead and contribute. And I will acknowledge any super chat. Any and all super chats we will acknowledge here on Sam Roberts Now. Let's go to him. Six Crow. Ricky Forrest says, Sam, back from vacation in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Due to my memory loss, I went back to the archives in 2015 to listen to your show. The After Roberts told me it was yours. Sadly, the October shows aren't there. Any idea where I can find it? I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what shows. If you're talking about Sam Roberts Now, they're all there. If you're talking about Jim and Sam, 2015. Are you talking about I don't know what shows you're talking about, man. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I think in 2015 I was doing Sam Roberts' show on SiriusXM, if that's what you're talking about, and I don't know where those shows are archived. I don't have any. Those are Sirius' shows, so I don't know what to tell you. Giovanni, but I appreciate you. Giovanni Peluso, hi Sam. There's a high-pitched tone that's been playing throughout all of your broadcasts for weeks. Is there a new device, unused mic plugged in, etc.? I don't hear it, man. I'm listening right now. If you hear it and I don't, okay, but I don't hear it. Dana Quigley, sometimes the water's running and you can hear it, but I don't know. Dana Quigley, I can't watch SRNow live anymore because of the new time, but wanted to drop a couple Hamiltons for your great content, especially with horror films. I hope you like Canadian melodrama as much as you like horror films because, look, I'm going to share my passions with you. Rob Thompson, and I appreciate you, Dana Quigley. Rob Thompson, I found out who did the original investigation on weed and reefer madness. Craig Schinkel. Getting fours tomorrow, 350s in another week. I don't know. I'm going to, dabble in trying to get the fours tomorrow. I'll enter for them, but I don't need them. I don't need them. You know, shoes that are all, I like a white four. Black fours, I feel like look clunky on my stupid feet. Not Sam Lehman. Hey, Sam, remember Ghostface? Member? Thank you, Not Sam Lehman. JD Straight Shot. Weed and worm dehorser is all we need. I think some worm dehorser would be good. Six Crow. Had a bad accident. Doctors gave me prescription pills, side effects, depression, suicide, teeth fell out. Basically, I was Doug Bell. Now I'm pot. I'm starting to come back. Man, I hear that so often from people. I hear that so often. I rarely hear, yeah, I tried pot. It screwed up my whole life. But, I mean, I started watching Dope Sick on Hulu. Oh, my God. Crazy shit is going on. I don't understand it. Mr. Galactus, big fan since 2010 from Ireland here. How about doing another watch-along, but with Ian? Many Saints of Newark. Commendatore. I think that'd be a good idea. Jeffrey Townsend, I appreciate the contribution. And Paul Grad, are we being punked? Maybe we were better off lonely. Next week, Sam breaks down Jared Leto's role in my so-called life. Look, I'm going to tell you right now. I know you're trying to joke. You're trying to maybe even be insulting. But if you are asking me to do a breakdown of Jordan Catalano, I will do it. If there is enough requests, if I see that in my app mentions or in the comments on this video, give us a Jordan Catalano recap. Give us a Jordan Catalano breakdown. I'm not going to sit here and not do it. I will rewatch the whole series and give my full analysis on Jordan Catalano. That's what we do here. I'm not going to hit you with the news of the day, okay? I'm not. But I will break down Jordan Catalano if that's what you're asking. And Six Crow, they are on archive.com. It says you put it up. It was the nighttime show, Sam Roberts show. I know that I'd put up a podcast for a period of time. Maybe that's what it was. It wasn't the full shows for sure. I didn't put up the full shows. But yeah, I wouldn't know where they are now, to tell you the truth. But I appreciate you going back and listening to them. A lot of Sam Roberts Nows if you want to go back and listen to those. And I see Michael, it's not a super chat. Where's the video episode with you and Eric Nagel? You better ask Eric Nagel for that. It's on video. I saw that man's face, and he saw my face. I don't know why he didn't put the video up. Apparently, he don't like hits. I'm going to tell you something right now. I like hits. I like hits, and I like likes. Hit the like button. Hit subscribe. Hit the notification thing. Leave a comment. And remember, even if you don't do all that stuff, I'm going to cheers with you later. We'll see you on Wednesday for another episode of Sam Roberts Now. Have a good one, everybody.